I was coming out of my sister's room when I saw him, standing in the hallway only meters away. He was tall, thin, dressed in old clothes with a poorly placed wig, with a face that was way too white, with red lips. He stared at me in surprise, unblinking, though I realized too late he couldn't blink. He lacked eyelids. Good evening, community. I thank you once again for being here, ready to listen. And I hope to find you in the best mood to dive into ghost stories, but if not, that's what we're here for. So you momentarily forget the world and escape to the paranormal plane, where your nighttime worries don't matter. Those stay out there. This episode is dedicated to everyone who has lived in a haunted house. No matter how small, we invite you to share your story with us. Time to turn off the lights and let go, because you already know you're already listening to Relatos of the Night. Hello, community. My name is Camila, and I've been listening to you since October 2024. Today, I want to share something we went through when I was a child. Something that happened to my whole family, but that I experienced in a way that still makes me nervous. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever stop fearing the dark. An intense fear of the dark. Born in Cadereyta, I grew up in Monterey. When I was 9, my parents bought a new house. Well, new to us, it was a foreclosed house. One of those that the bank takes because the owners can't keep paying and then sells them much cheaper, even though they're still in court. For my parents, it was an opportunity. Much bigger than our old apartment, which was too small and in a quieter neighborhood. It was a house we never could have bought at a normal price. The day we moved in, when we started bringing our things, the neighbors were friendly, but they said things strange. An elderly lady with white hair and large glasses served us food, and while my mom thanked her, she whispered, "I hope the owners stay away. They weren't good people." I won't explain any further, and that's how it was with several neighbors. Everyone was relieved that another family lived there. At first, everything was normal. Moving into a house that still smells like someone else feels both normal and strange. That still has the scent of the previous family. Not a bad smell, but it didn't smell like ours. I always had a strange feeling that I didn't want to tell my parents about. I didn't know how to explain it well, and I didn't want them to feel like I was seeing something negative about the house they had worked so hard to buy. Also, I guess the fact that little by little my parents started telling us that the previous owners hadn't left on good terms fed my feeling that the house was somehow rejecting us. The bank forced him out. They took all his things out to the street, furniture, clothes, even the family photos. Everyone on the block saw that. My dad said that it wasn't our fault, that the purchase was completely legal. Sometimes he grew quiet, staring at the door, as if he were waiting for someone to knock at any moment, demanding what was his. The first strange thing happened one night during the first week. I was already in bed and I heard footsteps inside the house. Not out on the street, not in the yard, inside. Some slow, oddly dragging steps, like someone struggled to lift a foot properly. I thought it was my sister Odette, who was in high school then, but when I checked, her door was closed. And the footsteps continued for a while longer, footsteps that halted outside my room. Days later at breakfast, my dad mentioned hearing noises in the walls, like something was scratching from the inside. He smiled and said it was probably just mice, but my mom stayed serious. The worst part was the rooftop door incident. That door is in front of some unfinished stairs that lead to the third floor, which was never built. It's in a remote part of the house we only use to hang clothes. One night while watching television, we heard the doorknob turn, like someone was opening it from outside. We ran upstairs, but there was no one there and I couldn't see anything. The rooftop is much higher than the neighboring houses, with several meters separating each roof. It was impossible for anyone to get in. For someone to jump? There wasn't then. No one could have been on the other side of the door. My dad tried to joke, saying that's what happens when you buy such a cheap one. But nobody laughed, least of all me, because though I didn't know it then, that was just the beginning. During the week, my routine was almost always the same. My parents picked me up from school and brought me to my mom's work. I stayed there for a while until my dad got off work, and then we all went home together. Well, everyone except Odette. She was in high school and would go straight home by herself. So at least a few hours a day, she would be completely alone there. From the first week, whenever we arrived and opened the door, we heard someone running upstairs. The sound was very clear. Hurried footsteps trying to hide, going from the rooftop or the third floor without stopping. They hurried down the stairs and ended up in his room. And then silence. My parents thought that Odette was doing something she didn't want us to see. Maybe she was spying on the neighbor, a guy that she found handsome since we arrived, who lived with his family and who, according to my sister, wasn't that bad. And that, translating my sister's language, means she loved him. Since they didn't see it as serious and she was shy, they never teased her about it. But one Friday, something changed. We had stopped by the supermarket before arriving, so my parents stayed outside taking the bags out of the car, and I went ahead to open the door. As soon as I put the key in, I heard the footsteps again. Someone is coming down from the rooftop to the second floor, running and now stomping loudly, and then a door slamming. I looked down the stairs from the ground floor and saw her. I saw her running by, but she was walking strangely. She raised her knees high and stomped, exaggerating each step, almost cartoonish. "Why are you running like a clown?" I asked him from below, almost laughing. He didn't answer. I just heard his door slam shut again. When my parents came in, I told them Odette was acting strange. But my mom looked at me like she didn't understand and said, "Your brother isn't here. He asked for permission to sleep over with his friends at Carolina's house." Me? I stayed quiet for a few seconds. I told them what I'd seen, and my dad frowned without saying anything and went up the stairs. As he reached the second floor, we all heard footsteps stomping down the upstairs hallway from end to end. They weren't hidden footsteps. They were heavy and angry. My dad stood still, staring into the darkness of the hallway. He said he saw nothing when he went downstairs, that he was still somewhat dazzled by the kitchen's white lights, but that he did feel something. He said he felt like someone passed by him quickly, that he felt the wind you feel when someone runs past you. We got scared. We went upstairs together, checked room by room, all the way to the rooftop and the unfinished part, and we didn't find anything, not a single open door or forced window. Nothing. But we knew what we heard, what we felt. I knew what I saw. When I think about everything that happened, I think what scares me the most isn't what I saw, but no one noticed what my sister was going through. A few weeks went by after what I told you before, and Odette still seemed normal. She attended high school, spent time with friends, and laughed together. But one day, Carolina, her best friend since middle school, called my parents. We barely knew her, but she sounded worried. She told them that Odette, had changed a lot since we moved there. She sometimes told her odd things. She initially said a voice spoke to her at night, from under the bed. Then she started hearing it almost all day, always from a dark place. Sometimes, in the middle of the afternoon, the voice told him to approach the closet, to slightly open the door, and from inside it would tell him something he had to do. Naturally, my parents didn't fully believe Carolina. They thought it was just teenage stuff, or maybe she was exaggerating. But Carolina insisted and said, "Please, just do something. Check Odette's room when she's out. That's all I'm asking you. Go check it. Check everything. And you'll understand me." That weekend, my sister went out and my parents took the opportunity to go into her room. I stayed back watching through the door, but then I went in too. Odette had a private bathroom. When they entered and turned on the light, we fell silent. The whole sink was covered in melted wax. I'm not talking about a few drops. There were thick layers running down to the floor. There were burnt-out candles everywhere and 3 lit candles in front of the mirror. In it, amid smoke, wax drops splattered on the glass. There were odd drawings, symbols that I can't really describe now, as if my memory had erased them. When Odette came back home, my parents confronted her. At first she denied it, but eventually she broke down crying but couldn't handle it in the end. She said she listened to the voice to protect us, then pleaded with them while crying. "Please don't blow out the candles near the mirror." She said that if they go out, we'll all face the consequences, especially Camila. "Place the candles in front of the mirror so you can go back and forth." Believing it was a psychological crisis, my parents sent her to my grandmother's where my psychiatrist uncle lived. She would be cared for, supervised, and away from the house that was hurting her. My family is especially close during crises, so they welcomed her gladly and told us not to worry, that she would be fine. That day, after taking her, we returned and my parents blew out the candles. I remember staying behind to clean and scrape wax off the sink while they took out the trash downstairs. That's when I heard something really strange. The sound of something coming out from under the bed behind me, slowly but with real weight. My whole body got goosebumps. I wanted to run and scream, but I just froze. I forced myself to turn toward the door to leave, and I saw that the room was empty. That gave me the courage to go outside and run, but when I reached the hallway, just a few meters away, there was something terrifying standing there. There was something resembling a very tall, thin man in an old faded dress. He was wearing a badly put-on wig, and his face was too white, like with too much makeup. His lips red, but all around was also stained with the same color, as if he had smeared paint or blood around his mouth. The worst part was his eyes, because he seemed to lack eyelids. He stared at me, surprised to see me. Suddenly, he ran to the stairs leading to the rooftop. The footsteps were quick and desperate, with him lifting his knees high as he climbed. And I don't remember anything else. I just woke up in the living room with my mom beside me and my dad fanning me with a folder. I had fainted. When I told them what I saw, my mom looked at my dad and said, "See? I told you that thing really is here. It's not my imagination. Turns out she had seen it too, though she never told us anything. Only to my dad, who still doubted her. I think I did need the candles to move back and forth. When I blew them out, she stayed here. And my parents complained a lot for months to the real estate agency, but they couldn't do anything. What the hell could they do? They assured us they weren't connected to the previous owners. But anyway, I guess there's no guarantee that ghosts don't exist. In the end, we stayed with that house because, I repeat, it was a great deal to buy it for that price. But we moved. Since then, it's been rented out, but no tenant has ever renewed the lease. Everyone leaves as soon as they can, even though my parents offer it at a very reasonable price, below what houses in the area are going for, even if they're smaller. The last thing Odette told me, and this was very recently about that house, was something that left me with a strange feeling. One day, discussing inheritances, he told me, "The day my parents are gone, that house is for you. I'm not going back there." Hello, community. I'm Javier from León, Guanajuato. A few years ago, I moved with my wife and 8-year-old son to a house in the historic center. The owner told us the building was over 100 years old, but that it had been recently remodeled. It was on the street of number, just a few steps from the corner. The rent was higher than what we had planned, but living in that area had always been my dream. Though the house had old features like wooden floors, high ceilings, and iron windows, the three of us loved it. My son's room was at the back, beside a small inner courtyard. When I walked in, I immediately noticed the walls needed cleaning since they were covered with pencil-written phrases. They weren't childish scribbles or insults. They were short phrases. Almost there. You wouldn't have... It's nighttime. I tried to clean them, but I couldn't. We assumed painting the wall would be all we needed. The first weekend, we painted the room with 2 coats. The first night we slept peacefully, but the next morning, the phrases had returned, in the same places as if we had never painted. At first, we thought maybe the paint hadn't covered well. Humidity and light made the old marks visible again. We chose to sand the whole wall, smooth it, and repaint. This time it worked. For one day. The next morning, the phrases returned, but they were no longer the same. Now they were longer. Tell him not to go out. Take it out of there. Stay with him. What unsettled me was realizing they always talked as if giving instructions, and it often felt like they could be about my son. My wife asked me not to tell him anything so as not to scare him, influence him, or put ideas in his head. But he began making strange comments. He first said he dreamed someone spoke to him from the wall in a soft, slow voice, as if it was hard to pronounce each word, as if he was running out of breath. One night, as I helped him with homework, I noticed him staring at a spot on the wall. He wasn't distracted, he was listening. When I asked him what was wrong, he told me, "He's asking me if he can come in." I didn't dare ask who, and you'll agree my son was already too old for imaginary friends. The scariest morning was a Saturday. My wife made coffee in the kitchen while I went upstairs to wake the boy. When I opened the door, I saw him sleeping. But on the wall, written in slightly larger letters and emphasized as if it had been repeatedly overwritten, I don't know if you'll believe me. Not even my mom did, but I swear on my son it was written on the wall. Yeah, he's coming for him. I don't know how to explain it. But that phrase, of course, felt different from the others. Besides, it seemed more recent, darker, as if written that morning. And that day we packed essentials and went to my in-laws' house. We came back a few days later just to pick up what was left. We didn't want to end the contract or try to get the deposit back. It was money lost. A nearby friend recently told me that after years of being empty, the house was rented. I wish good luck to whoever lives there now. Thanks for staying with us, community, for being one of those few who make it to this point and who instinctively look for these stories that most people don't want to hear. We listen to them because we're drawn to them, because in some way they remind us that we're still alive. Don't forget to check out the special video for the 2 million milestone to tell us how you joined this community, and that way you can enter to win one of the 10 autographed books that we'll send anywhere in the world. Please don't forget to comment. You could win one of 10 books. If you've ever had an experience in a place you now avoid, or that you're still terrified to remember, tell us about it. Send it to miralatodelanoche@gmail.com and we'll read it closely. And maybe it will become part of the next compilation. For now, let's continue. There are still more stories tonight. Hello, community. My name is Teresa and I live in Guadalajara. What I'm sharing happened a few years ago when we bought our current house. It's not a huge house or anything like that. It's more like an old building with narrow hallways that abruptly dead end, doors that don't match each other, and ceilings that change height from room to room for no clear reason. The owner said it had been renovated several times since the 50s, and that's why the floor plans didn't always match up. He laughed when he said it, as if it wasn't important, but I was left with an uneasy feeling, like moving furniture and seeing the floor underneath is a different size. Even so, we loved it. It's near downtown, on a quiet street, with large shade trees all day. What struck me on my first visit was the silence. Once you close the door, the street noise nearly vanishes. The room I was most excited about was upstairs. I wanted to make it a sewing studio since it gets lots of afternoon light. It had a built-in bookshelf made of very old wood, with such an even layer of dust that it looked painted. After moving in, my husband and I decided to remove it one Saturday to paint the wall. When we pulled it away, I noticed a colder air coming out from behind it, as if we opened a secret window. Behind the bookshelf, there was a built-in closet that didn't appear in the plans they gave us. The door was swollen from humidity and had a rusty bolt, like those on street doors, that are used to secure the door from one of the two sides, with marks showing it had been forced at some point. A sweet and sour smell drifted out, like wet wood and old perfume. That lingering drawer scent stuck to the television. It took us a while to open it. When we finally did it, the initial impact was visual. Old clothes neatly folded, as if it had been put away only yesterday. Thick fabric long dresses, men's suits with vests, a wide-brimmed hat, and 2 pairs of leather shoes worn at the toes. The odd part wasn't just the era, but that they were nearly dust-free. I touched a sleeve with my fingertips. The perfume scent stayed on my fingertip, as if the fabric was still releasing it. We checked each piece mostly out of curiosity. A cardboard box in good condition sat at the closet's bottom. No mold or water stains. Inside, a bunch of instant photographs. Everyone, and I mean everyone, they were brought inside. In the living room, the dining room, the main staircase, the upstairs hallway, a corner of the kitchen that I recognized by the tiles. In the pictures, there were people who, of course, we don't know. In many, people stood facing the camera, but their expressions showed reluctance to be there. In others, in most of them, backs turned, one hand up, always hiding their faces. In some, you could hardly see a shoulder in the doorway, a hand on the railing, a blurred silhouette behind. They seemed like visitors who didn't belong to the house. That night, once the house was calm, we spread all the photos out on the dining table. We started to sort them by rooms. We realized that there were repeated items. The now gone armchair, a floor lamp, a painting of flowers that no one left when they gave us the house. In over half of them somewhere, a long shadow appeared, as if someone stood just outside the frame and the flash barely outlined them. Something else caught our attention. Some photos showed angles that no longer exist. For example, one living room had a large window behind the sofa. In the current house, that wall is completely solid. In another one, you could see a staircase, and behind the woman with her back turned, a lit hallway where now there's only a wall. When calmer, we noticed details we first miss. Very small writings in the white margin of the photos looked like short dates or initials. On one, for example, it said was T.710, and in another one it said D.6, as if someone had been recording the time of each photograph. On a photo's back in blue pen, it only said 26/12/26. The photographs seemed to tell the story of the house's renovations. Its story, like a record of each new scar. We boxed them to prevent damage, and we put it on top of him with the intention of taking it somewhere else later. Since that space would be my studio, there were a lot of containers, the kind where I keep my materials. We locked the closet. For added security, my husband placed a heavy piece of furniture by the door. Yes, we both considered that. Security. About what? We didn't really know. But unconsciously, we knew we wanted the door to be well secured so that it couldn't be opened from the inside. Just in case, I remember he told me. The smell lingered in my nose all night. A sweet yet sour smell lingered on my fingers. The next day, while I was testing my machine at the desk in my studio, I thought the room was colder than the rest of the house. You can't measure it with a thermometer, but you know your own house. I walked to the closet and saw the satin ribbon I'd hung on the handle moving, though I hadn't touched it. Very slightly. Like when a draft comes in, but there were no windows open. The next week, one afternoon, I went upstairs with coffee to work on some hems of my knitting. I always play soft music, Juan Gabriel on my phone, nothing unusual. I was doing that when I heard a click. Brief, dry, like that of a camera, as if someone had snapped a picture. I stopped. I thought it would be my phone, but it was in airplane mode. I waited, but it didn't happen again. I didn't tell my husband so I wouldn't seem like I was overreacting. That night after dinner, curious, I looked at the photos again. I removed them from the container and examined them by the dining room. I counted one more. Even without looking closely, I was panicking. Thinking the worst, imagining a new photo that could show up. In fact, there was a photo I hadn't noticed before, but luckily I wasn't in it. If that had happened, I would have died of fright on the spot. As the days went by, I started noticing little things, small details. The room temperature changed independently of the outside weather. Sometimes in the afternoon, when sunlight shines through the window, the air in the studio was cool, almost as if there was a fan running at full blast and it would get cold. Other times at dusk there was an overwhelming heat, and that sweet smell from the closet would come out as if the wood was sweating that perfume. There was one time when, upon entering, I noticed a faint vibration in the floor, a little tremor. I thought a heavy truck was passing, but the street was silent. I turned to look at the nailed-down closet, and I could swear I knew the top hinge was a little loose. Just enough so you could see a darker line on the edge, as if the wood had given way. I honestly didn't dare touch it. One Sunday, my in-laws visited for lunch as I carried dishes to the study. I use that table for cutting, and sometimes I leave things there when the kitchen gets crowded. My mother-in-law stood by the room door. "What a nice studio you have, daughter," she said. "It just smells strange, doesn't it? Like an old wardrobe, like an old lady's." I told her we were airing it out so the smell would fade. She neared the wardrobe, and just before touching it, I distinctly heard her say, "Oh, there's someone inside." I asked her what she said, but my mother-in-law just backed away. "No, nothing, just some thoughts, that's all." I told her that if she wanted, I could show her, and she said no, absolutely not. She took the first excuse to leave me alone in my knitting studio. As soon as they left, I moved the heavy furniture down and got closer, put my ear to the board, and didn't hear anything. I knocked on the door with my knuckles. It was a light knock, more out of nerves than anything else. I felt the knock return, muffled, as if there was a lot of space behind, as if it were an echo, as if it were the door to a deep hallway. We secured the nails again, and my husband added 2 more. That night, while we were watching a movie again, we heard the very clear click from upstairs. We looked at each other, paused the movie, went upstairs, and turned on the light. There was nothing wrong. The closet door remained nailed shut, and the furniture was still stuck. We checked the whole house, windows closed, the main door lock in place. Everything was fine, but the sound had been very clear, and now my husband could confirm it. It had been the click of a camera shutter. A few days later, without having touched the box of photographs at all, I found one more around the house, alone, under a stair step. She was extremely restless, but it seemed almost abstractly our living room. The one we had brought, with our blue sofa, not with the old one from before. The shot was also a bit tilted, as if someone had taken it in a hurry while running. I set it on the table and took a deep breath to stay calm. When my husband arrived, I silently showed him the photo. He looked at it for a long time. "Don't worry, this is probably someone else's. You probably hadn't seen it. Remember the seller said many people had lived here? This house is full of memories. Of memories of those families the house will gradually spit out, that it will start showing us. Don't worry." That was his reply. That's all he said. I don't know if it convinced him in any way, but it definitely didn't reassure me. We stored it with the other photos in the box. That night, before bed, I asked him to nail the door shut again for security. It was already nailed shut, but we nailed it again, lower down. We added a metal L bracket in the corner. Nothing drastic, just to reinforce the door a bit more. A few calm weeks went by. I stopped leaving fabric on the studio table at night and kept it in a drawer instead. I didn't want mirrors facing the closet door. I shut the curtains at sunset. There are little habits you pick up without realizing it. The day something big happened again was during the week, already at night. We were watching the news when we heard a dull thud upstairs, louder than before. We ran upstairs. The study had the light off. When we turned it on, we saw the closet door open wide. Not broken, not torn off. Open. The nails were still in the wood, but the wood around them was splintered, as if it had swelled and broken. The furniture we left out front was slightly moved, just enough centimeters to allow it to open. The old clothes were laid out neatly on the floor, no mess, and the photographs spread out as if they had been thrown there. My husband silently gathered the photos and returned them to the box. He also put away the clothes and we closed the wardrobe again, this time screwing in 2 crossed metal plates. We lowered the furniture and pushed it against the door with all our weight. We didn't call anyone. Who do you even report a wardrobe that opens by itself when it wasn't in the plans to? That stores photos of the house. That keeps taking more. The next day was a normal day, half work, errands, simple food. In the afternoon, I went upstairs to gather my things from the studio. The room smelled more damp than perfumed, like opening a long-stored box. I touched the table, ran my hand over the sewing machine, and put away the threads. Before I left, impulsively, I placed my fingers on the closet door. It was cold, like a winter window. I paused with my hand there. All I heard was the usual house noise. The boiler, a distant car, my footsteps returning upstairs. We haven't moved the wardrobe again. The studio is still where I knit, but sometimes I prefer to keep it closed. Sometimes, very occasionally, I go upstairs for something and get that brief click, as if someone were testing a camera behind the wood. I don't chase or investigate it. I go downstairs, turn on the living room light, and handle something else. The photos remain in the same container, but not in that room anymore. We've already moved them down to the storage room. They label them miscellaneous, so no one gets curious and checks. And yes, they might wonder, why don't we just throw it all away? And I wouldn't know what to say. You learn to live with some things in a house, just as you live with noise or with doors that get stuck. I'm not sure if that's right or wrong. We recently had dinner with friends who shared paranormal stories. Many strange things happen in their house. I promise you, without meaning to leave them behind. I told them what happened, about the photos. After finishing the story, I got nervous and went to the bathroom. And when I came back, I heard my husband say when he picked up the photos, when that door burst open, he had seen one more photograph. One that he hid from me. One where I was knitting with my back turned, that he quickly hid without me noticing. I pretended not to have heard. I made noise so they would know I was coming. I didn't want to break that lie for him, but already on the way home, I asked him why he had said that. He got nervous and started sweating. In the end, after insisting a lot, he said he made it up to give the story a better ending. And I hope I can come to believe him. But I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't seem like him. Thanks for listening, comunidad. Have sweet dreams.